Hello guys, this is Issues and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Doctor Who, surprisingly enough. So this series is a series that I do fairly frequently. I'm kind of ruining it because I keep forgetting to do it, etc. But this series is all about nostalgia that I have for old episodes of Doctor Who. So Eccleston, David Tennant, mostly them. And their kind of era, and why I think that works so much better than the most modern era does, because even if you liked Series 11, you could definitely say that it needed improving. And in this series, I am looking at Series 1, and I'm going through all of the episodes, talking about them individually and what makes them tick. So let's start with The Empty Child. Obviously this is a two-parter, and if I can't fit it into one episode, then I shall do two. As a child, I really could not remember anything about this episode. No, as a teenager, I can't remember anything about this episode. So this episode was one of those ones that I didn't watch when it first aired, because those things are creepy, so I'm not going to watch it as a 4-year-old. But obviously it was quite a few years until I watched it. I was like 12. I want to say 12, but I feel like it might be older, to be honest. I feel like it might have been like 14, which... Jeez, kids watch this show, Daniel. The beginning of this episode was something that I completely forgot about. You know, I think that Moffat has this great way of writing scenes that generally are very uneventful in the story and making them interesting and making them seem like they have importance, which they don't, if that makes sense. I think it does. Like, there's a bit when he picks up a cat. It's not like that important to the story, but it's just a nice little moment. You know, a little bit of like cat chat. Cat chat. That's funny. Nobody else thinks it's funny though, but I do. It's cute moments like that that really make his scripts great. Like, say what you want about Steven Moffat, he writes some really good scripts. Oh, just knocked the camera over, that's a good idea. The last time I talked about the point of view shots and how they were used in an episode. If you haven't, you know, gone and seen that, go and have a look at it. I was talking about Father's Day, and they used point of view shots to delay the reveal of the Reaper. If you can't be asked to go and watch the last video, then I'll just explain it briefly. So Reapers were hidden for most of the episode, so that when they actually appeared, they had a big reveal, and the point of view shots helped make them seem like they were still in the background, a bit of a mystery, but then didn't actually have them appear till the end, which is actually quite a clever little plot device, I suppose. In this episode, they kind of use it and then immediately throw it out the window. So what you need to notice during this scene is that we see this we hear a horrible noise, this disgusting, like, nails down like chalkboard noise for a few moments during this section, right? And I believe that this makes, you know, the mummy creature thing a lot scarier. Well, I might as well just call it The Empty Child, to be honest, because that's easier. But there's loads of them, so it's not really an empty child. And I've walked away from the camera and I'm still speaking. While Rose dangles with plain.jpg, the Doctor walks into a club slash bar slash... That's all I got. We have a bit of a Doctor moment, right? So Eccleston has a very good acting face. That was a strange compliment. Eccleston is really good at portraying very subtle emotions through the Doctor, and I think that I like to keep account of these things. And I think that during this scene, the Doctor comes in and he asks everyone in the club whether they've seen any things flying from the sky, but obviously they're in the middle of the Blitz, so there's quite a few things flying from the sky. But when he asks his question, he pulls a great expression. Something like this. Rose falls off this zeppelin that she's decided to cling on to for some reason, and the Doctor doesn't really care about. It's a bit of an odd bit about the episode. So she falls, and by doing this she dates the episode by about 10 years. I do forget that these episodes came out in 2005, which is nearly 15 years ago. That's quite terrifying, actually. Looking at it, you can see that, like, it's been cut out, but like, technically for the time it's sound, technically it looks good for 2005, like the light makes sense, etc. All the basic, like, problems that you can have with CGI, there's none of them there. It's quite obvious that the ability that they had in terms of computers and etc was not very high, so they couldn't really render very nice images, and they can't really still, to be honest. Especially for Doctor Who. They're doing a lot better now, I think. But, you know, imagine how big their budget was for Series 1. You know, I don't think it was very big. Well, it might have been, to be honest, because they did 13 episodes, so they definitely had a bit of faith in it. Eccleston has a very good looking Doctor face, let's call it that. So this is a face when the Eccleston and the Doctors all have in common. It's when they look for something. For Jodie Whittaker, she kind of scrunches her nose. Say what you like about it, but she scrunches her nose. Eccleston does something quite similar, and his reaction is something like this. I'm not going to try and act it, that'd be stupid. Like, you can see the cogs moving in his head. It is a massive shame that he's only ever had one season, because if he had like 2 or 3, he could have been a really great Doctor, and I would put him much higher in my rankings of them all. You know, I think that because he gets so little in terms of like screen time, he gets like 13 episodes, so that's like 12 hours if they're 40 minutes each. He has 40 minutes to like surprise us, to give us a reason to care about his Doctor, compared to Matt Smith, who did 3 seasons, compared to David Tennant, who did 3 seasons plus specials, to Peter Capaldi, who did 3 seasons, to Jodie Whittaker, who's only done 2 at the minute, but, you know, there's no reason why she won't stop, why she won't continue and do another. But for Eccleston, I don't think they'll really go back to him, and he's all had this thing about distancing himself from the BBC over, like, a few good years, and he really struggled with, like, creative differences between the two. And now that all of that is cleared up, and he seems to be participating a little bit more in Comic-Cons, etc., maybe he will one day get himself a Big Finish series. So, what do you think? Do you want Christopher Eccleston back as the Doctor in some form? If you do, there'll be a poll over there, or that side. Might be that side. Carrying on, we see Nancy, who's a character I haven't spoken about yet, but is just about as forgettable as something forgettable. Well, she's forgettable at this point, but when the story fully develops, then she has a definite purpose. But for me, I feel like this is a very odd line which she says when she says about how the Doctor wouldn't know what it's like to be the only kid outside, out in the cold. And then the Doctor replies with, I would actually. So is this Moffat trying to reflect himself on the Doctor, or is he trying to reflect the audience members? Maybe they're the weird, like, kind of quiet kid. You know, maybe that's what they're going with. I don't really know a lot about Doctor's past, especially his childhood, so I wouldn't know if he was a child that was left outside or whether he was popular. I don't see him being particularly popular. Maybe Moffat is trying to make some comparison between the Doctor and the fans, but I was 4 at the time, and I was pretty cool as a 4-year-old. It's probably where I peaked. It just seems like a very strange line of dialogue to add, for it to not ever to mean anything apart from a throwaway line. Maybe you're trying to create some empathy, etc. Like, I just find these kind of lines confusing, and maybe most people can just kind of move on from them, but I really do struggle to not. I really do struggle to not. That was good English. Speaking of Moffat, he also has a thing about hospitals. He doesn't like them. I think, well, they're in 2 of his stories. So, World Enough in Time involved a hospital full of cyber people that were like half converted, and this one features the same sort of thing. In fact, there's actually a scene which is very much alike when we see Bill standing inside of the hospital, and then these cyber creatures that aren't quite Cybermen get up and they start like coming towards her. In the same way that these mummy creatures kind of come towards the Doctor, Jack and Rose at the end of the episode. Also, everyone has been to a hospital. A lot of people are born in hospitals. I was. And a lot of kids especially visit hospitals quite regularly, whether it's to see family or whether they need to be in hospital themselves. All of those reasons stand that a hospital is not a nice place whatever age you are. So, you know, going there, it's a very strange atmosphere, it's a very strange amount of people, and like it's a bit of a maze as well, and there's this gloom, like this grey wall, that everything has to be cleaned, everything looks extremely colourless, and as much as they want to change that, at the end of the day it's still a hospital, even if they, you know, disguise it with pictures or whatever. Like when I was in hospital, they had like a kids room that had like Scooby-Doo on the walls, but still it was a hospital, and they just couldn't block out the atmosphere of one. So I suppose a hospital is a good place to have something set. Hospital is definitely a good place to have a story, because a hospital is quite an odd place and quite a scary place as well. So a hospital is a great place to have a story about, you know, death and aliens and monsters, because hospitals are creepy. What else can I say? An exposition scene begins between the Ninth Doctor, well, obviously, and Victor. No, that's his character name. This is just an exposition scene when you think about it, but then you remember that at the end of this scene, there's actually something really cool. What I felt was a big problem for me in Series 11 was that there was a lot of scenes that were exposition, but didn't have that big wow at the end. And I think there's a way that, like, I've noticed that a lot of scenes will have tons of exposition, and then they will have something cool happen at the end of it. You know, like, so you're being chased, they stop, they pause, they talk, and then they carry on being chased. And there was too many scenes in Doctor Who Series 11 when they would move, they would stop, they would talk, then they would move again, stop, talk, but there was no, like, thrill, there was no rush, like, in like, transition. There was just, like, talk, move, talk, talk. For, like, I think the first episode was guilty of it the most. There was too many scenes of just people standing in a room explaining things over and over again, and it still took me 2 viewings to understand what it meant, because they kept repeating it. I was confusing myself. And this episode, like, makes you use your brain. It's not just kind of like feeding stuff in there like Series 11 was trying to do, and like constantly reminding you of things like you've forgotten what happened 2 minutes ago. But this episode does not allow you to do that. If you forget what happens, then you've forgotten what happens and you're an idiot. And this episode has this scene in which they talk about what caused the injuries, why these people have injuries as plague, and then one of them becomes the creature. And then the effect, we'll talk about that extremely briefly. And then there's the effect, and we can talk about that extremely briefly. Very smooth. It's, well, I think it's pretty good compared to it came out in 2005. Those eyes bulging out. Well, it's a simple morph really at the end of the day. But the transition and the creative way that they brought the, whatever it's called, mouth, that is pretty cool. And I quite like the idea that the eyes become hollow and dark and empty quite quickly, and then you see like the face, the skin, everything, you know, change. But you know, it's 2005, it's low budget television. What do you really expect? Because, you know, Game of Thrones, things like that don't exist at this point. And money, like, the Game of Thrones gets millions per episode. That kind of stuff does not go into Doctor Who, and it never has. So, the fact that they can still try to pull off effects like this is something that should be rewarded. Even, you know, and the effect looks pretty good at the end of the day. The empty people wake from their sleep, and then this means that we get to talk about those creatures, and I think these things are really cool, right? The fact that, you know, let's take a look at the episode title. It's called The Empty Child, and what it means by this is that the child inside is gone, and the eyes reflect the idea that there is dark, there is nothing there. And what's quite clever about the gas mask is that if you took it without its historical context, you could say that it was something that was a bit creepy, a bit dark, and a bit monster-like, and Moffat has utilised this into his episode to make it the villain. There must have been people that were scared of the gas masks, just like the look of them. You know, as like a small child, if you're walking around in a street and then there's people with a gas mask on, etc., you know, that would be quite a fright for a young child. The episode concludes with the word mummy and "Are you my mummy?" being repeated over and over and over. It just sounds like I'm saying "and over" now. So what's interesting about this is that they try to do something quite clever. They try and create this sort of atmosphere that there's loads of them and they're going to get killed. And they're all coming closer and closer, and that's why they get the shots closer and closer to reflect that idea. But what they don't do is they don't keep building. There's a short amount of space between them actually getting up and them actually ending the episode. And if they wanted to go further, then they could do like they get closer, and then it keeps going. Are you my mummy? Are you my mummy? Over and over and over and over and over for longer, and then with the characters reacting like this. Just so then you can bring it out by like another 10 seconds, and that would probably extend like the tension, so then the episode doesn't feel like it ends quite rushly isn't a word, but it ends and it feels rushed. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure you give a like, subscribe if you are new. Thank you very much for watching. I did hope you enjoyed it. Part 2 should come out in the next week or so, and that is going to be fun to talk about. I need to talk about Captain Jack in the next one because I haven't talked about him at all in this one. So thank you guys very much for watching, and I shall see you soon. Goodbye.